Have you ever sat still long enough to notice the subtle current moving inside your mind? Not the words you speak, not the emotions you feel, but that invisible hum of thinking that seems to never stop? We call it thought. But what is it really? Where does it come from, and why does it shape our entire reality so powerfully? Today, we explore one of the deepest mysteries of the human experience. Is thought itself a sense? Could it be that the same way we see through the eyes, hear through the ears, and feel through the skin, we also think through a subtle inner organ, one that perceives not the world around us, but the world within? Thought is the unseen fabric of our perception. It whispers before every action, colors every emotion, and even defines how we interpret what our eyes see or ears hear. We believe we think about the world, but what if the world we know exists only through thought? This is where the question becomes profound. Is thought just a tool we use, or a sense through which consciousness experiences itself? Think about how sight works. Light reflects off objects, enters the eye, and gets processed into images by the brain. The eye doesn't create what it sees. It perceives what already exists. Now imagine if thought works the same way, not as a creator, but as a receiver of information from deeper layers of consciousness. What if thought is a kind of inner vision, a sixth sense that perceives the invisible dimension of meaning, possibility, and imagination? When you sense danger before you see it, when you suddenly understand a problem without reasoning it out, or when creativity flows like a stream without effort, those are moments when thought reveals itself not as a mechanical process, but as an organ of inner sensing. You perceive a truth that wasn't previously visible. And yet, because most of us identify with our thoughts, we mistake the sense itself for who we are. We say, "I think," but rarely ask, "What is thinking me?" This identification is where the confusion begins. In spiritual awakening, one of the first insights that dawns is that thought is not who you are. It's a function, like sight or sound. You are the awareness behind it, the consciousness that observes it. You are the space in which thought arises and dissolves. To realize this is to begin freeing yourself from the tyranny of mental noise, the constant commentary that interprets, judges, and defines every experience. Let's look at how this mechanism operates. Thought, by its nature, is dualistic. It divides, categorizes, labels. It creates opposites, good and bad, me and you, success and failure. This duality is useful in the material world. It helps us navigate, plan, and survive. But when we mistake this division for ultimate truth, suffering arises. Because in reality, life itself is not divided. It simply is. The mind's attempt to define life splits the seamless flow of being into fragments of thought. From that division, all inner conflict begins. Thought is a powerful generator of energy, what we call positive and negative thinking. But energy is neutral until consciousness interprets it. A thought of gratitude, peace, or forgiveness opens the system, expands awareness, and aligns the nervous system with harmony. A thought of fear, anger, or resentment contracts energy, closes the system, and feeds the illusion of separation. So in truth, there are no good or bad thoughts, only frequencies of consciousness expressing through the field of mind. If you observe your own thought long enough, you will see that most of it is repetitive, inherited, and reactive. Much of what we call my thinking is actually the echo of cultural conditioning, childhood programming, and social memory replaying itself. The mind replays what it has absorbed from experience, constantly trying to interpret the present through the lens of the past. That's why we suffer. We live in a mental movie that no longer matches reality. Thought becomes a filter that blocks direct perception of what is. So, what happens when you stop identifying with the thinker? When you simply become aware of the flow of thought, as if watching clouds move across the sky, something miraculous occurs. The space between thoughts, the silence that holds them, becomes visible. That silence is not empty. It is full of presence, intelligence, and stillness. This is the real you. Consciousness begins to perceive itself beyond the mind. The sense of I am emerges, free from the need to define or justify its existence. In this state of awareness, thought finds its rightful place. It becomes a servant, not a master. You can use it deliberately, creatively, and lovingly. You can think without being trapped by thinking. You can design, imagine, and communicate, yet remain anchored in the quiet awareness beneath. This is the balanced use of thought, when it is guided by awareness rather than ego. The ego, by contrast, is thought identifying with itself. It's the mental image of who we think we are. When the ego runs unchecked, thought turns inward like a loop. It constantly tries to protect, defend, or prove its identity. It interprets everything as personal because it sees everything through the lens of me. That's why spiritual awakening feels like a death to the ego, because awareness no longer feeds that mental identity. It sees thought for what it is, a function, not a self. To awaken is not to stop thinking. It's to see thought clearly, without confusion. Imagine your mind as a river. When you're caught in thought, you're being swept downstream by its current. When you're aware, you're standing on the shore, watching the water flow. The river still moves, but you are not lost in it. You can choose when to step in and when to remain still. Now let's ask, where does thought come from? Neuroscience says thought is a product of electrical impulses between neurons, a function of brain chemistry. That's true on one level. But spirituality adds another dimension. It says the brain is like a receiver, a biological instrument tuned to a field of universal intelligence. Thought, then, is not generated by the brain, it's translated through it. Just as a radio doesn't create the music it plays, your mind doesn't create the intelligence it channels. It interprets it. This means every human mind is part of a shared field, a collective consciousness. Thoughts are waves moving through this field. That's why sometimes you think of someone and they call you moments later, or why certain ideas emerge in multiple people around the same time. The field is one, but its expressions are many. When you awaken, you begin to sense this unity directly, not as belief, but as lived truth. So what is the purpose of thought in this vast play of consciousness? Its purpose is creative translation. Thought gives shape to the formless, language to silence, and structure to imagination. Without thought, we couldn't build, express, or share. But when thought forgets its source, when it becomes disconnected from awareness, it turns chaotic, anxious, self-destructive. The world we see today is largely the product of thought disconnected from presence. Technology without wisdom, knowledge without understanding, speed without depth. That's what happens when the sense of thought loses touch with the heart. The heart is the balancing sense of consciousness. While thought divides and analyzes, the heart unifies and feels. When thought serves the heart, life becomes creative harmony. When thought rejects the heart, life becomes mechanical conflict. The spiritual journey is not about killing the mind, but about realigning it with the deeper intelligence of love. In that alignment, thought regains its beauty. It becomes an instrument of insight, compassion, and creation. Notice now as you listen, thought is happening even as we speak. You're interpreting these words, comparing them to what you know, agreeing or disagreeing. That's thought in action. But who is noticing that? The awareness that is listening behind the commentary. That is not thought. That is your true sense of being, the silent witness. When that witnessing deepens, thought becomes transparent. You begin to see through it, rather than from it. This seeing is the beginning of wisdom. You start recognizing that every thought is a movement of energy, some expansive, some contracting, and you choose consciously which ones to follow. You become the artist of your mind. You start thinking on purpose instead of thinking by habit. You realize that creative thought is sacred. It's the way consciousness experiences its own potential in form. Let's take an example. Suppose you wake up and your first thought is, "Today will be hard." That thought immediately shapes your perception. You begin to filter your experiences through that expectation. Your mood changes, your energy contracts. But if, from awareness, you notice that thought as it arises, without judgment, you create space between the thinker and the thought. In that space, a new possibility opens. What if today brings something unexpected and beautiful? Just that single shift in vibration changes the trajectory of your day. That's the power of awakened thought. The mystery of thought, then, is that it is both a veil and a doorway. When unconscious, it veils the real. When conscious, it reveals the real. It's the bridge between spirit and matter, between infinite silence and finite form. Through thought, the universe dreams itself into existence. Through awareness, the dreamer wakes up. To live consciously with thought is to understand its rhythm. There is a time for thinking and a time for silence. A time to imagine and a time to simply be. Just as breathing alternates between inhaling and exhaling, consciousness alternates between thought and stillness. Both are sacred. Both are necessary. The key is balance, never being lost in either extreme. As this understanding deepens, life becomes simple again. You no longer fight with your thoughts, nor believe every story they tell. You see them arise, you smile at them, and you let them pass. Some you use, some you release. This is mastery, not control, but clarity. Because in the end, thought is just a wave upon the vast ocean of awareness. And you are not the wave. You are the ocean. So, is thought a sense? In a way, yes. It is the inner sense of meaning. Just as eyes see form, ears hear sound, the mind perceives significance. But thought is only one instrument in the symphony of consciousness. When played in harmony with the heart, body, and spirit, it becomes music. When isolated and ego-driven, it becomes noise. The spiritual awakening is simply the tuning of this instrument, aligning the sense of thought with the silence from which it comes. And in that silence, all thoughts dissolve back into light. The mystery of thought ends where awareness begins. The thinker disappears, and only pure seeing remains. What's left is peace. The mind still functions, but as a transparent servant of the soul. Words come, ideas flow, creativity blooms. But you remain rooted in the stillness beyond them all. That is the true awakening, not escaping thought, but understanding it deeply enough to see that you were never trapped by it in the first place. The sense of thought is a gift. Use it wisely. Feel deeply. Think clearly. But above all, stay aware of the silence that is thinking through you now.